Frontier Town, the saga of the Roaring West. Frontier Town. El Paso, Cheyenne, Calgary, Tombstone. Frontier Town. Here is the adventurous story of the early West, the tamed and the untamed. From the Pecos to Powder River, Dodge City to Poker Flat. These are the towns they fought to live in and lived to fight for. Teeming crucibles of pioneer freedom. Frontier Town!
Ever hear of a cow town called Dos Rios? Well, don't feel bad if you haven't. It's just one of those frontier towns, roistering and noisy, perched in one of the lushest and richest valleys below the Continental Divide. Me, I'm Chad Remington, the town's only lawyer. But like everyone else, I've got my own ranch with the typical well-fed, slab-sided herd of cattle for which our valley is so famous. And just because these cattle are valuable, well, it gives some men ideas. And that makes plenty of business and trouble for a saddle-stop lawyer. It wasn't too long ago that I was riding in toward Dos Rios from my spread. Cherokee O'Bannon, he runs the town livery stable now that we've talked him out of peddling his genuine Indian rattlesnake oil. Cherokee was riding with me as we cut across some open range trying to get to Dos Rios before sundown. Hey, look at those Herefords, will you, Cherokee? Someday, with a few more head, I might even be able to burn up my law books and retire.
And I use the term at the twinge of conscience, you must have bats in your belfry. Looking at a bunch of cows like that. For shame.
What have I done now to offend your artistic integrity?
What has he done now, he says? My boy, you've been casting sultry, longing looks at a bunch of blank-faced cows, when half that emotion spent on a proper female woman would return to you tenfold, nay, 100-fold.
Oh, don't you go biblical on me, you old reprobate. And something else. Unless a man has a few head of good beef, he can't afford to cast long, lingering looks at a woman.
Chad, my boy, your total lack of sophistication and experience hurts me deeply. A man who has some money in his jeans doesn't need to bother with the distaff side. He can go out and woo old John Barleycorn.
Cherokee, the older you get, the more unregenerate you become. Your total lack of appreciation for a herd of cattle is something that I... Hey, Cherokee, rein up.
Slow there, Garrett.
Oh, boy. Easy.
What in Billy Blue Blazes happened to you, Chad?
Oh, you see that water hole just ahead of us?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that a tin can lying next to it, lying on its side?
Yeah. Unless my optics deceive me, that's an empty 5-gallon can. But what about it? It's a lead pipe cinch. It didn't contain old spiritus fumenti. That's drinking liquor to you.
No, it's a lead pipe cinch. It didn't contain anything that pleasant. I got an awful feeling it did contain 5 gallons of enough stuff to poison every steer that drank out of that water hole.
Why, if I ever catch the pussyfootin' polecat that did that, I'll darn well destroy him. Come on, girl, get up!
I'd like to get my hands on the buster who did this. Putting poison in a water hole.
I must admit it's incomprehensible even to me. Why would someone want to poison a lot of dumb, defenseless cows?
I don't know, but with their stock poisoned off, how many ranchers around here could pay their debts?
You mean to say someone deliberately? By the great God Pan, Chad, this is the most nefarious bit of chicanery I've ever heard of.
It certainly is.
Now, just a minute. I heard you say just the other day that not over half a dozen ranchers in this whole valley owe a mortgage to the bank. That old sourball Ripley who owns the bank forced most of them to pay up a year ago last spring. So what debts could they have?
Plenty. Ever since Ripley shut off most of the credit, which absorbed most of the cash folks had on hand, everyone's been buying at Parker's store because Lisha Parker's been willing to let his bills run.
Lisha Parker? If you mean to insinuate Lisha Parker's mixed up in this cattle poisoning, you and I are coming to fisticuffs. Why, that old gentleman is so honest, it makes me blush. Yes, it does.
Oh, calm down, Cherokee. Calm down. This has nothing to do with Lisha. But legally, if the ranchers can't pay their debts, he could go to court, get judgment, and take them all over lock, stock, and barrel in liquidation of his claims.
But if you say Lisha is mixed up in it, shucks, Chad, I think you're putting your money on the nose of the wrong horse.
Yeah, I'm not making any bets on this race. 'Cause I got a notion it's been fixed. I'm blame well gonna find out if I can before the sun sets today. If I sounded like a boastful kid, well, that's just the way it turned out. Because after talking to Lisha and Sarah Parker, not only didn't I find anything before sundown, but I didn't find out anything for the best part of a week. Waterholes continued to be poisoned. Strangers drifted in and out of town. Even the sheriff couldn't find out a thing that'd help. And then, best I can piece it together, another stranger arrived in town. The stranger. The stranger who wasn't too strange to the handful of gunslicks who'd been hanging around town. They got together in the Silver Boot Saloon.
Hey, bartender, let's have another bottle.
Hi, Lefty. The boy said you were over here.
Pull up a chair and rest your frame, Krug. If you got your work done. You must be tired. Bring another glass with that bottle.
I got my work done all right. You know me, boss.
Yeah, I sure do. That's why I shipped you up here ahead of me. Any trouble?
Oh, shucks, no. Oh, there's been a Jasper in town snooping around. A lawyer named Chad Remington. But he ain't found out a thing, Lefty, believe me.
He'd better not find out anything if he wants to go on practicing law. Because I'll get him just the way I'm gonna get Parker's store.
Now, look, Lefty, you ain't ever been here in Dos Rios before. Me and the boys have been here for more than a week. And I'm telling you, that there Lisha Parker is a stubborn old goat. He'll never sell.
No? Well, let's just suppose that Parker won't. Don't you think his widow will?
Widow?
That's what I said, widow. And if Parker is as crusty an old goat as you say he is, it shouldn't be too hard.
Shouldn't be a... Lefty, I'm sorry, I just don't get you.
Well, just like you said, Parker's got a nasty temper, hasn't he?
Well, yeah.
You're going over to that store and talk Parker into an argument. You understand? Poor Parker, with that temper of his, gets sore and grabs for his gun. That's all, mister. He grabs for his gun, only you outdraw him.
Hey, you really got something there. Don't let nobody tell me Lefty Slaughter ain't got brains.
Yeah? Well, instead of wasting your time trying to butter me up, you better be getting over to Parker's store, because once he's out of the way, it's still going to take time before I'm the owner of all the choicest ranches in the Dos Rios Valley. Now, go on. I'm getting so anxious, my tongue's hanging out.
Lisha? Oh, Lisha.
Yes, sir? Oh, want me to put that bold calico up on the shelf for you?
Would you please, Lisha? You're a dear.
After 42 years of what we've been through together, sir, certainly doesn't take a... Well, looks like we got a new customer coming in.
Howdy.
Howdy.
I'd like a pound of sugar.
Pound of sugar. Yes, sir. Right here.
I said I wanted a pound.
Well, sure, I heard you. This is a pound sack.
You aiming on calling me a liar?
Now, look here, mister. I didn't ask you to come into my store.
But I come in, and I'm not gonna have some thieving crook like you give me a half pound and claim it's a pound.
You get out of here. Doggone you. Turn around and clear out of my place before I blast you out.
Lisha, don't.
Why, you bald-headed old goat. Nobody's putting me out of no place.
I'll show you who
Lisha,
to
watch
put you
out.
on in.
Lisha! Lisha.
Hold it, you. Get away from that door.
Watch him, Cherokee.
Catch a light, Chad.
Did he do the shooting, Mrs. Parker?
He killed my husband.
Yeah? Well, I only shot in self-defense.
Is that the truth, Mrs. Parker?
Yes. I tried to stop him, but Lisha did draw first.
Well, now are you satisfied?
Can't say that I'm satisfied. I guess the sheriff won't hold you in the face of that evidence.
Lisha. Oh, Lisha, why did you do it?
Can't tell you how sorry I am I didn't get here 2 seconds earlier.
Oh, That's all right, Chad. Oh, Elisha. Elisha.
Just saying how sorry I am. I know it isn't going to bring your husband back, but there's still an account to be squared up, and I'm hoping you'll let me square it. Come on, Cherokee. We're going to escort this buzzard down to the sheriff. It was a foregone conclusion that the sheriff had released Krug, but not before we found out that he had something to do with the stranger who'd arrived in town, Lefty Slaughter. Not knowing Slaughter, I decided to go down to the saloon where he was hanging out and size him up just in case.
Go on, honey, one more drink. Then I'll give you some more folding money to lose at Faro.
Oh, excuse me, but the bartender pointed you out to me as Lefty Slaughter.
Yeah. Something I can do for you, my friend?
If I didn't have something else on my mind, Slaughter, I'd ask you to apologize for calling me a friend.
Asking for an apology and getting one are two different things.
Well, maybe I've been lucky, but I generally get what I ask for.
And maybe that's because you make it your business to ask the wrong people.
Yeah, maybe. But I didn't come here to ask you anything. I came here to tell you something.
You don't say.
Elisha Parker was just shot down in cold blood. And I thought you'd want to know I'm making it my business to find out why.
Oh? Well, I never had the pleasure of meeting this Mr. Parker. But if he was a friend of yours, I can't say that I'm exactly sorry.
Well, you may be sorry. Next time you or any of your gun hands try to finish off what you've started.
And now, if you're through, I'm sure you'll excuse me so I can start enjoying myself.
Well, sure, Mr. Slaughter. Enjoy everything while you can. Because if you keep up like I think you've started, legally or otherwise, I'm going to help see that you enjoy the next 50 years of your life rotting away in jail.
We'll return to the exciting second act of our frontier town adventure in just about 1 minute. And now, Frontier Town.
Guess I sounded like a boastful kid all over again. I mean, going in and deliberately rubbing Lefty Slaughter the wrong way. But I've found until you've rubbed the fur, you can't tell if the animal you've got is a house cat or a polecat. Sometimes they're both dangerous, but you trap them different ways. Well, I found out in short order that Slaughter was as cold and cocky as they come. Knowing that, there was nothing more I could find out until such time as he chose to make his next move. So Cherokee and I sat for 4 more days in my office up above Cherokee's livery stable, looking out the window and watching the entire street. Then late the afternoon of the 5th day, Cherokee turned away from the window suddenly.
Chad, look there. That double-dyed, dirty gunslinger who terminated Elisha Parker's mortal existence is walking down the street with Lefty Slaughter.
He was walking with him. Now Krug's turned off into the saloon and... Hey, you see what Slaughter's doing? He's heading straight for Mrs. Parker's store.
If that's the case, and it certainly seems to be, then what are we doing loitering about this legal loggia?
You're right, Cherokee. So grab your hat or your gun or both, and let's be finding out what business Slaughter might have with Mrs. Parker.
Some of the boys over at the hotel told me about the misfortune you had, Mrs. Parker. I mean about your husband.
Well, certainly mighty kind of a stranger to come over and pay his sympathies.
And believe me, sympathy is just what made me drop in today. You see, I got to thinking about how difficult it might be for a woman like you to try and run a store alone.
Yes. I'm afraid it really takes a man's mind to run a business right.
Oh, isn't that the truth? And since I came to Dos Rios looking for a business to go into myself, and with you now probably wanting to sell...
Oh, I wasn't thinking of selling out, Mr. Slaughter.
Now, I know this may sound kind of sudden, but I'm willing to pay you a fair price. All cash. Say $2,000.
$2,000? Why, we've got more than $20,000 just owing us on the books.
Sure, books. With their cattle dying off like flies, that $20,000 isn't worth the ink it took to write it. Well, I don't aim to argue with a woman, but I'm a fair man. And once I make up my mind, I don't let anyone change it.
Well, now, isn't that too bad? Now, you just listen to me.
Mrs. Parker, you'd better do the listening. I've got $3,000 here in cash, so suppose you sit down and start writing out that bill of sale.
Well, if I were a man, I'd take that shotgun off the wall.
Afternoon, Mrs. Parker. Hello, Slaughter.
What are you doing here? Butting in again?
Nope. But since you're determined to stay in Dos Rios, I'm just being neighborly. And seeing as you want to spend your money, I thought I'd suggest to Mrs. Parker that she accommodate you.
Accommodate him? Why, what do you mean, Chad?
Well, since you haven't done much cash business this year, I thought maybe I could help Mr. Slaughter spend some of that cash he's got on him right here, since he's so all-fired anxious to buy something.
Chad, I don't want any of his money, not any of it.
Now, who said it was his money? I'd hate to think where it came from.
If you could think at all, you'd keep your nose out of this.
What do you mean, think? If he could just smell, he'd keep his nose out of your business. Reach to the high heaven.
Why, you loudmouth.
Chad, stop him. He'll wreck my whole store.
Don't worry about your store, Mrs. Parker. You able to get up, Cherokee?
Once I get some of these picks and shovels out of my hair.
Slaughter, that was a mistake hitting Cherokee. Bad mistake for you. But at that, I guess you wouldn't have hit him if he hadn't been 20 years older than you are.
Yeah? Who says so?
I say so. I'm about your age. Why didn't you hit me? Well, I'm not too gentlemanly to hit you.
That's it, Chad. Beat the brains out of the blighter.
Not much satisfaction to that, Cherokee. He won't hit back while I'm facing him.
Well, if I had my way, I'd christen his thick skull with a few bottles of my Indian rattlesnake oil, applied with vigor.
I'll see both of you again.
I'm sure you will, but you're not leaving yet. Remember I was going to help you spend some of your hard-earned money here with Mrs. Parker? Cherokee, load some of those picks and shovels you knocked over into Mr. Slaughter's arms.
My boy, you've got a most imaginative idea.
Well, what does he want with picks and shovels, Chad?
From what I've heard, he's fixing to dig his own grave.
There you are. 3 picks, 4 shovels.
Mm-hmm.
Hold out your arms, you insult the human race.
Gonna pay for this?
Oh, no, wrong again, Slaughter. You're going to pay for this. 3 picks and 4 shovels will be, well, in round numbers, let's say $50. And Cherokee, since we always aim to help the customer, just peel one of those bills off Mr. Slaughter's bankroll.
Just one?
Just one.
You're never going to live a life of ease like that, Chad.
Now, let's see. You can carry a little more. Just about room for a bolt of that calico. And it's just the right color for Slaughter, too. Yellow.
Yellow. It'll make a nice yellow shroud for that grave he's digging for himself.
Yeah, with all the money he's got left, it's too bad we can't sell him a headstone. He's going to be needing that soon, I think.
You're gonna be laughing on the other side of your face before I'm through with you.
For the time being, you're through with me now. So, adios, Slaughter. And in consideration of your $100 purchase this morning, Mr. O'Bannon will be glad to open the door for you as you go out.
Goodbye, thank you. And be sure not to come in again.
Chad, I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, I'm afraid your thanks are a little premature.
Why, what do you mean?
Chad thinks he knows what that crook is up to.
Seems to me Lefty Slaughter found out that almost every rancher in the valley owes you money. He's decided to cripple them, force you to sell out to him, and then take over what ranches he's wanted for the money they owe the store.
How terrible. But why did you let him walk out of here? Why didn't you have him arrested?
Well, because so far he's been too smart to involve himself. He has his hired gun thugs do his dirty work. Until we get them, Slaughter's still in the clear.
Oh, I see. But isn't there anything you can do to stop them before they murder someone else like Lasha?
What I'd like to do is create a situation which may force Slaughter into doing something he hadn't planned on. Some crime he hadn't figured in advance. And then catch him red-handed. I think we can, Mrs. Parker, if you'll give me your permission to call a meeting of all the ranchers who owe you money right here at your store. Quiet, please.
Suppose you stop acting as if you're running this whole show, Remington. Let Sarah Parker do her own talking.
Now, there's no talking for me to do. I've sold this store and all of its assets to Chad Remington, and from now on, you'll have to do business with him.
Go on and grumble if you want, but it isn't going to do any good. You owe this store money, and I want cash on the barrelhead. Or if I don't get it, I'm going to court and take judgments against every one of you.
Remington, your poor father must be turning over in his grave. How do you expect us to raise money now?
You can raise money. All you got to do is drive your cattle to market and sell it off.
Why, it's almost 2 months till shipping time.
Instead of standing around here arguing, I'm advising you to get together and start a drive with your herds up to the nearest railhead. I'm only giving you 5 days to be back with cash. So if you know what's good for you, you'll be on your way by sunrise tomorrow morning.
Are you loco, Krug? Remington buying out Mrs. Parker's store?
Boss, I was there myself with the whole crowd, and he told them to get out and drive their cattle to market and be back with the money in 5 days, or else he was taking over every ranch in the valley.
Well. There's nothing crookeder than a crooked lawyer. The funny part is, what he's doing is playing right into our hands.
Playing into our...
Sure, what happens? Those ranchers start driving their cattle to market. You and me and the rest of the boys are laying for them. We get the cattle. Remington don't get the money, and the ranches he takes over are worth nothing.
Well, I'll be... That smart monkey is playing into our hands. What good are them ranches without cattle on them?
No good. Krug, you go round up the boys. A thing like this calls for a real celebration.
Lefty thought I was dumb, all right. The Dos Rios ranchers knew I was a crook. All I was sure of was I was taking a long, wild chance and hoping it would pay off. Next morning, just as I told them to, the ranchers joined up in one big trail drive and started for San Jacinto. From where we were perched, Cherokee, the sheriff, the posse, and I, we could see the cattle spread out along the trail almost as far as the eye could reach. I guess we waited more than an hour. Every man Jack's eyes shaded from the morning sun, scanning the pass below us, waiting, praying for some sign of trouble. And finally it came. A single shot. And then in the next instant, it sounded like it must have that day at Gettysburg. We waited for a moment to make sure we were right. And then the sheriff unholstered his gun and turned to me.
You sure were right, Chad. Look at them rustlers pour out of that canyon.
There must be 1 million of them. 2 million, maybe.
Yeah. All right, you posse men. Unholster those 45s and let's get to riding.
Cut down through that arroyo. That way we can get between them and the cattle.
And right in front of those rustlers' bullets. Say, Chad, haven't I got time for a little drink of my rattlesnake oil or something?
All you got time to do is squeeze the trigger. Come on, let's go.
Pussyfooting polecats is turning around and heading for the woods.
Oh, it's that yellow-spined skunk, Slaughter. Hey, Sheriff, you keep after the rest of them. Slaughter's trying to sneak away. I'm going to get him.
All right, Chad. All right, come on, men. And don't waste lead shooting over their heads.
All right, get around there, fella. Slaughter's got a quarter of a mile head start. Slaughter? The further away you ride, the further you're going to bounce on the way back to town. Now, I'm not warning you again. If I bulldog you off that horse of yours, you're apt to break your neck. All right. Here's your lead back with interest. Get up there, boy. Come on. Get alongside of me. In there now where I can get my arm around that. Doggone you, Slaughter. Am I going to have to break your arm?
Stop, Remington. Oh, let go. You got me. I quit.
There.
I quit.
All right, then. Come on. Get up. Yeah, and start walking. It's a long trip back to Dos Rios and to jail.
God blame you, Chad. Here you had us thinking you were a bigger crook than Slaughter. And all the time you were doing it for our own good.
Yes, sirree. Just like a father with an unreasonable kid.
Spare the rod and spoil the child. That's Chad's motto.
What's your motto, Cherokee?
Well, I guess you might say it is spare the flask and spoil the drink. By the way, isn't it about time for the libation right now?
From the way I look after Bulldog and Slaughter off his horse, it's about time for me to take a bath and put on some clean clothes.
Well, it's not premature to thank you now, Chad. Except I don't know how I ever can. Enough.
You go talking to that young sprat like that, Seer, and he'll go getting a swell head. Not that he don't deserve one, though. That little idea of his of making the boys trail their cattle certainly squeezed Slaughter into pulling one crime he hadn't figured on.
Yes, all right, Sheriff. And in honor of my dear friend's talents, I suggest someone buy me a little shot of something good so I can propose a toast to it. Besides, my knees haven't stopped shaking yet.
Well, my knee isn't shaking, Cherokee, and it's strong enough to turn you over it and beat a little genuine Indian tune on your tom-tom.
Go, Chad! If you turned me over your knee, not only would you break my spirit, but you'd bust a flask full of the finest Cherokee Indian rattlesnake oil that ever whetted a man's whistle. I'm going home.
Frontier Town, starring Tex Chandler, is a Bruce Ells production. Supervision by Joel Murcott. Story and direction by Paul Franklin. Music written and played by Ivan Ditmars. Be sure to be with us again, same time next week, for another fine action-adventure story with your favorite young Western star, Tex Chandler. This is Bill Foreman telling you that Frontier Town came to you from Hollywood. Frontier Town, the saga of the Roaring West. Frontier Town. El Paso, Cheyenne, Calgary, Tombstone. Frontier Town. Here is the adventurous story of the early West, the tamed and the untamed. From the Pecos to Powder River, Dodge City to Poker Flat, these are the towns they fought to live in and lived to fight for. Teeming crucibles of pioneer freedom. Frontier Town!
Howdy. Sprawling boisterously across a rawhide tough frontier is a little town at Dos Rios. Not much of a town, to be sure. A few stores, a church, start of what someday will be a school, 9 saloons, and one so-called lawyer. The lawyer's name is Chad Remington. Well, that's me. Of course, there's not enough law business in the whole county to keep me busy, but I do own a ranch left to me by my dad when he died. Naturally, there wouldn't be a lawyer in Dos Rios if we didn't have a court. And with the court, it goes without saying, we have a judge. Judge Fillmore, whose daughter Libby happens to be a most special favorite of mine. Well, with the lack of law business, one day not so long ago, the judge and I decided to see what we could do about getting ourselves some wild turkeys. So we saddled up a couple of my horses, took 2 of my best rifles, and started scouting.
Nice shooting, Chad. You got yourself 2 gobblers.
You call that nice shooting, Judge? Shot 4 times and only got 2 birds. Well, that's what a fella gets for spending too much time practicing law and not enough time practicing with a Winchester. 2 out of 4.
Well, if you can keep as good an average hitting the bullseye for your clients, they should have no complaints.
Clients? I haven't seen one in a month.
You don't mind my representing you, Chad. Never admit to a man who might be your future father-in-law that you can't keep his daughter in the style to which she hopes to become accustomed.
That's good advice, Judge. And I'll be happy to pay your fee if my future father-in-law gives his consent someday. Well, I better be picking up those 2 toms before the buzzards get to... Ah, who's this coming?
I see someone coming, all right, but without my glasses...
Well, it's no wonder you only bagged 1 turkey. That's Tim Brackett. You know, the young puncher who works over at the J. Lazy L.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Tim!
Howdy, Chad. Judge.
Well,
Hi.
Tim.
Riding all over Patty's half-acre looking for you. Cherokee told me you're probably out here on a turkey hunt.
You looking for us?
Well, I guess either one of you alone would have been all right. Got a legal question I'd like answered.
Well, see, Judge, business is picking up. What's on your mind, son?
Well, it's just something I made a bet with a fella.
No one can legally force you to pay a bet, Tim.
No, that isn't what I mean, Judge. Let's suppose some fella, borrowed $10,000 on his ranch.
Some fella. Huh?
Yeah, some fella. Well, suppose this fella paid all of it but $2,000 and then couldn't pay the $2,000 right off. Could the man with the mortgage take the ranch away from him?
It might sound inequitable, but legally, until every last cent is paid, interest and all, the lender can foreclose and take possession of the property.
That's a fine thing.
Lose your bet?
Yeah, sure did lose my bet.
Well, if you didn't bet your month's wages, there's no reason to commit suicide.
Look, I just hate myself for doing this, but could one of you lend me a little money?
Well, I don't know.
How much money is a little money, Tim?
Oh, $20, $25.
As long as you're going to have to owe somebody, why not owe the man you lost the bet to?
Well, it's not for him. It's for my sister.
For your sister, huh? I never heard you talk about a sister before.
As a matter of fact, neither did I.
You mean you ain't gonna let me have it?
Not at all. If you give me a word that what you need the money for is strictly legitimate, I guess I can scrape it up.
Chad, word of honor. I need $25 to help out my sister.
Well, that's good enough for me, Tim. Here you are. Don't go losing it riding back to town.
You bet. See? I'll wrap it up and put it right here in this buckskin pouch in my pocket.
Good. And don't forget, there's no particular hurry about paying it back.
Hey, I'm sure not much at speech making, but thanks, Chad. Thanks from the bottom of my heart. Get up there, boy. Let's go. Hey, boy!
Chad, do you think you should have given that boy the money without finding out exactly what he needed it for?
Well, he said he needed it for his sister, and that certainly was good enough for... And wait a minute. He must have dropped something when he pulled out that pouch. You see it there?
What is it, Chad? What is that piece of paper?
This piece of paper is a letter. From the return address on the envelope, the boy has got a sister. Lives over in the next county in Dry Wells.
Well, I'll be darned. I didn't believe that story about his sister being in trouble, but apparently it's true. You think maybe under the circumstances that we ought to open that letter and see what the trouble is?
Well, if the girl's in real trouble, certainly $25 isn't going to cure it. All right, Judge, what do you say we read the letter and find out?
Certainly. If she needs more money, maybe we can do something to be of real help.
Well, here goes. Find mighty good that 25 can do his sister.
And it was his sister he was talking about, Chad?
Yep. When her father was alive, he borrowed $10,000 on their ranch. It's paid down to $2,000 now, and she can't meet that. Judge, I've got a notion we better hightail it over to the J. Lazy L and find Tim. The rest of this story may be interesting. Very interesting. Nobody at the J. Lazy L knew where Tim was. He'd taken the day off. So the judge and I headed back toward town. When we got to Dos Rios, the judge went home. I went up to the offices I keep, located over at Cherokee O'Bannon's livery stable. Cherokee, not only my landlord and sidekick, but also a former medicine man, was gnashing his teeth over my letting $25 slip through my fingers so easily.
Of all the impoverished, impecunious imbecility, you take the cake, Chad.
Well, I've got a sweet tooth. I like cake.
Well, if you would direct your elementary instincts in the proper direction, 1/5 of that amount would have set 'em up for everybody down at my favorite hostelry, the Lady Luck Bar and Grill.
Instead of ranting that way, Cherokee, and worrying about your constantly unquenched thirst, you might give some thought to where we could find Tim.
First, you give him legal advice. Then, instead of charging him for it, you...
What did you stop for, Cherokee? Well, what are you staring at out the window?
Unless this is an optical illusion, the most ravishing and pulchritudinous bit of femininity is about to come up the stairs to visit you, you bucolic Blackstone. Absolutely stunning, Chad.
What an eye.
What a girl.
Come in?
Which one of you gentlemen is Mr. Remington?
Why, I am. Cherokee, get the young lady a chair.
Just what I was about to do. Here, won't you please sit down?
Thanks. Thanks so much. Mr. Remington, my name is Emily Brackett.
Brackett? Well, like I always say, it's a small world after all. We were just talking about another Brackett. A young cowboy over here, Tim Brackett. A fine, upstanding lad.
Tim's my brother.
Well, it is a small world, isn't it?
They told me out at the J. Lazy L that you'd been out there a while ago looking for Tim, and I thought you might know where I could find him.
At the moment, I don't, Miss Brackett. But while you're here, I have a confession to make.
Yes?
I read a letter you wrote to Tim about the money owing on your ranch.
Well, he probably showed it to you because he wanted some legal advice.
Well, that wasn't actually the reason. But now that I think about it, I have an idea your brother's headed for something which might bring a bit of trouble.
Trouble?
Cherokee, you're a man of the world.
Indeed I am, my boy. Pride myself on it.
If you needed $2,000 and didn't know how to raise it, and providing, of course, someone would lend you $25, what would you do with the money you'd borrowed?
Well, since it wouldn't take $25 to drown my sorrows, I might be inclined to risk it in a game of stud poker to see if I could run a double eagle up into some of the long green folding type money.
You mean that my brother borrowed $25 to gamble?
I don't mean anything yet, Miss Emily. But if you'll sit right here, there are only 9 places in town where he could gamble. And Cherokee and I are going out and see if we can find that young man.
Staying in the pot, Tim?
You're blame right I am, Duke. Staying in and raising you another 20.
Hey, you must have another king in the hole, huh?
What do you mean by that, Duke?
What do you mean? What do I mean? Anybody with the cards showing that you have and betting the way you are must have a king buried.
I always kind of suspected you could read the backs of the cards, Duke.
Are you insinuating that I'm running a crooked game?
I ain't insinuating, I'm saying so. How else could you know I got a king in a hole?
Tim, I've been operating in Dos Rios for 6 years now. No one's ever talked to me that way before. So I'm asking you to pick up your money and get out.
Who are you trying to bluff?
I'm not bluffing, Tim. I'm telling you to clear out of the game.
Yeah? Well, if I leave the game, I'm taking the pot with me. In a square game, I'd have won it. Duke, take your hands off that money.
Tim, don't act loco. You go reaching for your gun and...
Excuse me. Get back here. Come on. Duke, who plugged Tim?
I did, Chad.
Why, you low-down, double-dyed...
Now, just a minute
sneaky-
before you both go shooting off your mouths. Why don't you ask someone who was here what happened?
It was Tim's fault, Chad. He called Duke a cheat and a liar and then went for his gun.
And that's gospel. I tried to stop him, but when he threw down on me, there was only one thing I could do. I guess I did it.
Yeah, I guess you did. All right, some of you men, pick Tim up and take him over to the undertaker's.
Oh, Chad. Chad, if only you'd gotten there just a little earlier.
Believe me, Miss Brackett, you've got to try to get hold of yourself. Unfortunately, all the grief in the world isn't going to bring your brother back.
You just say the word, miss, and I'll fill that thieving gambler so full of lead that he'll bust right through the floor and bury himself right there.
You can save yourself all that trouble, Cherokee. 'Cause after I've had a chance to talk to a few men who were in there and I find out what actually happened, I may take care of Duke. I'll give him a chance to take care of me.
Oh, no. You've done all you should already. Don't go back down there.
I've got to, Miss Emily. That's got to be finished before we worry about your ranch. If there's anything I can do, you're not going to lose your place to a money-grubbing loan shark for 20 cents on the dollar.
We'll return to the exciting second act of our frontier town adventure in just about 1 minute. And now, Frontier Town.
From all I've noticed, death, sudden and brutal death, is as shocking in a frontier town as any place else in the country. But somehow on the frontier, folks seem better able to pull themselves together and go on with the things that have to be done. And so it was that Emily Brackett, over her first shock at her brother Tim's killing, had regained some of her composure and was able to answer a few questions.
Well, that's about all there is to it, Chad. Everybody around our part of the country had always borrowed from old Sam Tennyson and never had any trouble. It wasn't until Mr. Tennyson died that the man who took over all of his loans began to foreclose in wholesale lots.
When you say took over all his loans, what do you mean by that?
I mean, well, I don't know exactly, but this Mr. Sturgis bought the mortgages from Sam Tennyson's estate, I guess.
Sounds crooked to me.
Estate? Did Tennyson have any heirs, sons or daughters?
He had a son, but he died a few weeks later in an accident. A bridge he was riding over collapsed.
Convenient, wasn't it? For Sturgis, I mean.
What?
How many ranches has your Sturgis foreclosed on already?
Oh, goodness, I don't know, but I guess there isn't a part of the valley he doesn't own some acreage in.
Well, I think we've imposed on you enough, Miss Emily. Right now, we still have a little unfinished business to take care of. Business with Duke Rafferty. Leaving the judge, Libby, and Cherokee to take care of Emily Brackett, I started out to see that Duke Rafferty, the gambler, paid for the wanton killing of Tim Brackett. So, like any lawyer, I began asking questions to get the proof which would support my case. When I'd asked about half a dozen people who'd been in the so-called cafe, I wasted little time going over and paying a call on Mr. Rafferty in person.
What do you want to see me about, Remington?
You'll find out, Duke.
Yeah, you gotta stick your nose in everybody's business, huh?
At the moment, all I'd like to do is see you alone.
Yeah, you lawyers. Come on. Let's go into my private office.
Thanks.
Okay. Now what do you want?
Duke, I've made it my business to talk to half a dozen men who witnessed Tim's killing. But it didn't take long to learn that Tim threatened you, and even though you tried to stop him, it was the kid who cleared his holster first.
Well, you had me worried for a minute. You know, you got a reputation and a pair of eyes that throw a cold chill into a man.
Well, you can relax. Now, they tell me Tim Brackett accused you of using a marked deck.
I think you know better than that, Chad.
Check. Now, how about doing me a favor?
Aim your own game, Chad.
Running a place like this, I imagine you've met a lot of the fly-by-night gents in this part of the country. I was wondering if you could give me a line on a character over in Dry Wells in the next county, a big money man by the name of Sturgis.
K.C. Sturgis?
K.C.? I don't know. All I know is the name Sturgis. What does K.C. mean?
Well, if it is the same Maverick, I know the K.C.'s a nickname. Stands for Kansas City. That's where he came from originally before he started to work the small towns along the Pecos, the mining camps through Colorado.
Work the mining camps, eh? What is he, a gambler?
Well, he gambles, but he doesn't make his living at it.
Well, what does he do to make a living?
Casey? Does anything and anybody. All he is, Chad's a confidence man.
Confidence man, is he? That's very interesting, Duke.
How in the name of Hannah did you ever get mixed up with a gent like that?
I'm not mixed up with him yet. But now that you've given me this little rundown on him, I got a notion it won't be very long before I am mixed up with him. Plenty.
Great gilded glory, Chad. What conceivable difference can it make if Sturgis is a confidence man?
It may make the difference between being able to save Miss Emily's ranch or having Sturgis take it over for the few $1,000s still owing on it.
Chad, as far as I'm concerned, you haven't answered Cherokee's question.
I guess you're right, Judge. But if Cherokee is willing to ride over to Dry Wells with us and indulge in a little acting, I've got what might be a bright idea.
Now I'm more confused. Confidence man and acting?
Well, all right, then. Here it is in a nutshell. If Mr. K.C. Sturgis is a confidence man, and if you introduce Cherokee to him as your wealthy uncle from the East who's come out to visit you, I think Sturgis will forego your ranch temporarily and make a play for the larger stakes.
Chad, I'm afraid you'd make an unsuccessful impresario. Me, a multimillionaire? Why, even with my astounding amount of histrionic ability, I'm afraid that's a characterization at this late date too far beyond my impecunious experience.
Cherokee, with a little expert coaching, we'll have you lighting your cigars with $20 bills. And I must say, Chad, although your proposal is slightly extra legal, it sounds as if it might work on a confidence man.
Well, there's an old saying, Judge, takes a crook to catch a crook.
Sir, am I to infer that you're branding me a crook?
Oh, not on your life, Cherokee. I convict no man till he's proven guilty. Why, until I see you in action in Dry Wells, I'm not even calling you an actor. Well, we got to Dry Wells the next day and moved bag and baggage into the spare room in Emily Brackett's little ranch house. Then she sent word to Sturgis that she wanted to see him. When we saw Sturgis arriving, I suddenly remembered something I hadn't thought of before.
That's Sturgis. Just riding in through the gate now, Chad.
Oh, good. Then in that case, the judge and I'd better go into the kitchen while Cherokee demonstrates his histrionic Oh, good gosh. So one thing we hadn't thought of.
What's that, Chad?
Cherokee's name. Emily can't introduce him to Sturgis as her Uncle Cherokee. But what is your right name, Cherokee? Come on. Sturgis is almost on the porch now.
Surely your parents gave you a name when you were born.
Yes, they did. And I still hate my revered pater for it. My name, my cognomen, my handle is Aloysius.
So you see, Mr. Sturgis, when Uncle Al got my letter asking for the $2,000 I still owe you, he simply packed up and came right out here.
It was $2,000, but it's more than that now with the interest and default charges.
My good fellow, what difference can that make? What difference can a few thousand make one way or another? No nephew, whatever a she-male nephew is called.
Niece, I'm your niece.
Thank you, Emily. No relative of mine is going to lose a ranch for a few paltry dollars. When I've got so much, I've got to keep it in 3 banks.
In 3 banks?
3 banks and a private vault.
What?
Well, having been in the furniture business all my life, nose to the grindstone and all that, it's always been my dream to come out west. Out west where men are men and gold is where you find it.
Well, I've known people before to come out from the east looking for gold and lose everything they had, but...
Mr. Sturgis, if you're meaning to discourage me, you're not succeeding. Because if I can find a suitable piece of gold-bearing land, I'm prepared to pay upwards of $50,000 for it.
Uncle, really, you should.
Now, just a minute, Miss Brackett. Your uncle's a successful businessman. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. And if you're real serious about wanting a piece of gold-bearing property, sir, I know of one that's got a fortune on it. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if I couldn't get it for a little more than the figure you have in mind.
Buy on figures. Take me to the property. And if I like it, I'll give you a draft on my bank. At least on one of them.
Well, look, I'd better check up on this land first and see if it's still available. And if it is, I'll show you the most valuable piece of gold-bearing property since the mother lode was discovered.
Well, if it doesn't take a crook to catch a crook, it certainly took an actor to bait the trap to catch the crook that time. Sturgis practically ran for his horse and headed for town with the judge and myself trailing him cautiously. And there, after a while, we saw him come out of a mining claim office and head out toward the desert. About 7 miles out of town, with nothing around but rocks, cactus, and Joshua trees, the judge and I saw Sturgis dismount, kneel down, and burrow under some of the rocks. We didn't wait for him to mount up again, but we circled the location and came back afterwards. Late that afternoon, we saw him again approaching the spot in the buckboard, carrying Emily and Cherokee with him.
Well, Al, my boy, here's the prop. Here's where we get off.
Well, this is certainly picturesque, Sturgis. But there's nothing here but desert.
That's the beauty of it. That's why you can pick it up for 80 or 90,000. Why nobody even thinks there's gold out here. And just to show you the fortune that's here, suppose you just stoop down and look under any of these rocks.
You think I should, Emily?
Go on, Al, go on. It won't bite you.
Well, all right. Well, there's nothing under this rock but a lot of crawling worms.
What? Let me see. Oh, that's funny. Well, let's look over here. There's surely a few nuggets under this rock.
There aren't even crawling worms under that one.
Mr. Sturgis, I have a feeling you brought me out here on a fool's errand.
Why, there's no more gold here than a... Oh, look, Uncle Al. Isn't this Chad coming?
Chad? Who's he?
He's a friend of my brother's over in Dos Rios. Looking for us, Chad?
Oh, fella, hold it, boy. They told me it's your place you'd ridden out this way, so we trailed you. I'm glad to say I've got just about enough for you to pay off your loan.
Well, this is really a coincidence. This is Mr. Sturgis, the man who holds the mortgage.
Oh, howdy, Sturgis. I don't suppose you mind if I haven't got it in cash, but if you want to go back to town, the bank will give you money for these gold nuggets.
Gold nuggets? Let me see them.
Oh, sure. Here you are.
Oh, you low-down crooked. Where'd you get these nuggets?
What difference can that make? I told you the bank would take them.
You double-dealing buzzard. You stole them. Stole them right from here.
Oh, how come you know where I got them?
How do I know? Because I put them here.
Well, you know because you put them here yourself. You salted this little piece of land and were ready to sell it as a gold mine.
What? Trying to bilk me by cheap chicanery?
That's nothing but a lie. You can't prove that.
Oh, no? Can we prove that, Judge, or can't we?
In any court in the land, because both of us saw this confidence man ride out here and plant the nuggets right before our eyes.
You double-crossing sneaking dog.
Don't close both his eyes, Chad. He's got to have one good one when he signs that release.
Don't worry, Cherokee. I'm only going to dot one eye and one chin. And now, Mr. Sturgis, you can either get up yourself or I'll help you up. Because we're all going back to the Brackett Ranch where you'll sign a receipt for payment in full for the balance of that mortgage.
What are you talking about? You just admitted those nuggets were mine.
They were, but there's a law that says finders keepers.
And another law in anyone's courtroom which says a confidence man can be sentenced to from 15 to 20 years in jail.
Well, how about it, Sturgis? You coming back with us and signing that release?
All right. I know when I'm late. But give me a chance to get my breath, will you?
Listen, you faker. I'm going to give you a better chance than you would have given me. It so happens that in my hip pocket, I have a bottle of my genuine Cherokee Indian rattlesnake oil. One mouthful of that for you and one for me, and we'll all be able to ride back.
Now, just a minute, Cherokee. We've agreed on the punishment for this crime. And we're not forcing Sturgis to drink that alcoholic loco juice of yours unless we catch him on 10 counts of attempted murder.
Chad, That's the most unfair cut you
Go
Frontier Town, starring Tex Chandler, is a Bruce Ells production. Supervision by Joel Murcott. Story and direction by Paul Franklin. Music written and played by Ivan Ditmars. Be sure to be with us again, same time next week, for another fine action-adventure story with your favorite young Western star, Tex Chandler. And now, this is Bill Foreman telling you that Frontier Town came to you from Hollywood.